Dennison is excused. Ben Vitale.
Present.
Brett Kyle. Paul Pickney is excused. Aileen McNabb Coleman.
Here.
Joseph DeForest.
Here.
Terry Baxter.
Aye.
Joseph Bennett.
Here.
Frank Reginelli.
Here.
Patrick Mahonik.
Here.
Timothy Lattimore is excused. Michael Didio.
Here.
Ryan Foley.
Present.
Keith Batman.
Here. So let's rise to the pledge and remember the sheriff who's going to have a replacement in a couple weeks, which was
Knee replacement, not replacement.
I was going to say something about personality, but you saved me the trouble. So I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, at 5:30, I'll open the public hearings on the three laws, one regulating secondhand dealers, one establishing an energy benchmarking requirements for certain Cayuga County municipal buildings, and the third one providing for salary increases for certain county officials appointed for fixed terms. What we're going to do at this point, because one of the laws we have a presentation about because there have been some changes. So at this point, I'm not going to ask for public input yet. What we're going to do is do our section of public to be heard if there's anyone who wants to speak on something other than the local law. Then we'll have the presentation by the sheriff and Lieutenant Skank, and then we will entertain any comment from anyone in the public who wishes to speak on any of these laws. Okay. So let us begin with our regular agenda. We have two proclamations.
NAACP 18th anniversary of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Millennium Award recipients, January 27, 2017. And Cayuga County salutes Tyler J. Spearing, Eagle Scout, January 14, 2017.
Thank you. At this point, is there any public that wishes to be heard on any topic other than the laws? Okay, thank you. Okay, Sheriff? Lieutenant?
About 6 months ago, I asked Detective Lieutenant Brian Skank from our CID to look into the secondhand dealer law, which we started actually 5 years ago, and it didn't proceed very far. I came to the legislature, and that was as far as it went. I asked Brian to look into it and start forming a new law, and he'll explain how he did it. Brian's done an outstanding job. He's talked to other counties, talked to a lot of vendors and business people in our community, and he's put a lot of time into this. So Brian, I know, has a speech to make and a presentation to make, so I'll let Lieutenant Brian Skank. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Sheriff.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Chairman Batman and the legislative body for allowing me to present tonight, giving me the opportunity to provide some information regarding the pending secondhand dealers law proposal. As you know, we at the Sheriff's Office have been working on crafting a secondhand dealers law for Cayuga County to assist in our law enforcement efforts. It's our intent that this law aid in the tracking and recovery of stolen property while considering the impact of the law on local businesses. It is also our intent that this law aid in the identification of those abusing and selling illegal drugs, especially heroin, and help cut a funding stream that supports addiction in our community. I'd like to talk about some history and provisions of the law that I feel are important, the work that we in the law enforcement community do. I would also like to point out some cases that we've solved as a result of a secondhand dealer's law in a neighboring jurisdiction. And finally, I would like to share my own opinion as to why I believe that the adoption of a secondhand dealer law in Cayuga County is important. In 2013, the Onondaga County Legislature adopted their most recent secondhand dealer law. Last year, the Oswego County Legislature adopted a similar law that was created using the Onondaga County law as a template. Their law was adjusted to fit their needs. However, it is very similar to the Onondaga County law. A number of months ago, the sheriff asked that we at the sheriff's office begin to explore the creation of a secondhand dealer's law here in Cayuga County. With the surge of heroin and other drug use in our area, often purchased by those abusing the drugs with proceeds from the theft and sale of stolen property, as well as the success that we had had due to a neighboring law, it was our belief that we needed to adopt a law in Cayuga County. It also appeared that we had the support of other local law enforcement agencies, as well as District Attorney John Boodleman, to adopt a local law. District Attorney Boodleman has been involved in reviewing and editing our proposed law, and we appreciate his help. We started by looking at the Onondaga County law as well as the Oswego County law. They were similar, and in reviewing them, they generally appeared to address our goals in regulating the purchase and sale of secondhand property. They sought to regulate secondhand dealers, and in summary, they identified secondhand dealers as persons or entities that bought and sold secondhand articles, or in other words, goods sold at resale. The laws provided for dealer licensing requirements, exemptions for certain types of purchases and sales, purchase reporting, retention periods for items purchased, and penalties for failure to comply. It was our belief that there were also benefits in adopting a law that was similar to laws in neighboring counties. We took those laws and drafted a version of them that we believe will work for us here locally. When I use the word us, I don't just mean the law enforcement community, I mean all of us as a community, including the business owners that could be affected, as well as the public we serve and protect. I know that there have been some concerns by local secondhand business owners as to the impact of this law on their business. I did reach out to some of our local businesses that would be impacted by this law should it be adopted, and work to obtain their feedback and thoughts as we continue to draft it. I would like to thank those that spoke to me and shared their concerns. A number of them are here tonight, and I appreciate your help with this. The proposed law would require that the owners of those businesses that are considered secondhand dealers obtain a license. Part of the licensing requirement would include a fingerprint check of the dealers to confirm that they have not been convicted of certain crimes in the preceding 10 years. We propose that the fingerprinting fees be paid using proceeds and assets seized from drug dealers. We believe that the purpose of this law should not be to generate revenue or create additional costs for our local businesses. The law would exempt a number of sale and purchase types from being regulated, such as sales of items at certain garage sales, antiques purchased and sold, items sold at auction, clothing and books, internet purchases and sales, and more. The goal of this law is to regulate the purchase and sale of items that are typically stolen and sold for cash. The law would require a dealer hold regulated items for 7 days before resale, giving time for recovery should the item be found to have been stolen. At times, stolen property has been sold to a secondhand dealer and resold soon after, making recovery of stolen property difficult or impossible. Last year, we were unable to recover over $5,000 worth of jewelry from a single theft that had been stolen from a home just outside of Auburn and sold to a local secondhand dealer, as there was no requirement for the dealer to hold it. We identified and arrested the person responsible. However, the dealer had immediately resold the jewelry and it was melted down within 7 days. We could have recovered the stolen items if we had this law in place. These items were of great sentimental value to the victim, and unfortunately we couldn't get them back. Another important provision of this law is the reporting requirement. The dealers would be asked to upload purchase information online to an internet database maintained by a service called Leads Online. It is free for the dealers and easy to use. Information related to the identity of the seller and the item or items sold would be uploaded. Pictures of jewelry and precious metals would be uploaded as well. The law were adopted. This information would then be available to law enforcement. Leads Online currently has 3,800 law enforcement agencies nationwide using the system and over 22,000 businesses uploading information related to purchases. Dealers in Onondaga County are currently required to report to Leads Online, and the Oswego County Legislature will soon be considering an amendment to their law requiring the same. We at the Sheriff's Office currently utilize Leads Online. However, our secondhand dealers in Cayuga County do not report their purchases to the system at this time. Last year, the Sheriff's Office took 162 separate larceny reports in Cayuga County. The Criminal Investigations Division adopted 72 burglary and grand larceny investigations. These numbers do not reflect cases investigated by the Auburn Police Department and the New York State Police in Cayuga County. For each one of those reports, a member of the Sheriff's Office has to physically respond to each secondhand business in Cayuga County to check purchase records to see if the stolen property was sold to a local dealer. It is not possible to do in every case. By using the Leads Online system, a database can be checked by law enforcement agencies locally, including the Sheriff's Office and others nationwide, quickly and efficiently. Should our law be adopted, law enforcement will spend much less time locally driving from secondhand dealer to secondhand dealer and more time solving crime, identifying and recovering stolen property, and reducing the cash available to drug and heroin users and dealers. I'd like to provide some examples of how the Onondaga County law has helped us solve crime and how we have utilized Leads Online to solve cases. I'm not going to identify exact addresses or defendant names to protect the victims and due to the fact that some of the cases are still open. These are cases investigated by us at the Sheriff's Office. A residential burglary in the town of Cato was solved when a subject was identified through Leads Online selling stolen jewelry in Onondaga County that had been stolen in a local burglary. The subject was arrested and the stolen property was recovered. That defendant was a heroin addict. A residential burglary in the town of Conquest was solved when a subject was found through Leads Online to be selling proceeds from the burglary in Onondaga County. The subject was arrested, and as a result, additional stolen property from an unrelated case was identified and recovered. This defendant was also suffering from a heroin addiction. A laptop computer stolen in Fairhaven was found to have been sold to a pawn shop in Jacksonville, Florida using Leads Online. The seller was identified and local authorities in that area were notified. The subject that sold the computer did have ties to northern Cayuga County. A burglary in Moravia was solved when proceeds from the burglary were found to have been sold in Onondaga County. Stolen property was recovered and the subject responsible was arrested. As a result of the previously mentioned investigation, a stolen shotgun from yet another burglary was recovered and additional charges are pending. While recently checking the Leads Online database from December 5th, 2016 through January 21st of this year, I found that residents from Cayuga County had sold 213 separate items to secondhand dealers in Onondaga County. A single person was responsible for 76 of those items being sold out of the 213 on multiple dates, with the majority of the items being brand new retail items. The subject was recently arrested and the investigation is pending, as many of these items, if not all of them, were stolen. Using Leads Online, we have this information available to us where we wouldn't have it otherwise. The case examples I just provided are just from purchases logged primarily in Onondaga County and the one in the state of Florida. I know that we have stolen property sold here in Cayuga County on a routine basis. However, we do not have the ability to track it as the purchases are not logged. There is no doubt in my mind that our list of solved cases will grow substantially if our dealers here report. I would also like to point out again that these are just cases connected to the Sheriff's Office. They do not include cases connected to the Auburn Police Department or any cases related to the state police here in Cayuga County. In 2014, I personally worked in conjunction with the New York State Police in Auburn to arrest a subject from Onondaga County that between July of 2013 and February of 2014 sold over $30,000 worth of brand new stolen retail merchandise in multiple weekly transactions to a secondhand dealer that was operating in our county. This is the amount he was paid for the items, and they were obviously worth much more. I'm concerned that he came here with the stolen property as he knew the dealer he sold it to did not have to report, as the dealers do in Onondaga County. I'm sure that we have criminals bringing stolen property here to sell in Cayuga County from neighboring counties, as they know that our dealers do not report to law enforcement. I have recently learned that Cortland County has adopted a similar law as well, using Onondaga County's law as a template. As jurisdictions around us adopt laws, we are likely to attract more and more of this activity if we do not have a reporting requirement in place here. In closing, I want to add that I've been a law enforcement officer here in Cayuga County for almost 20 years. I have a number of items hanging in my office, and I wanted to share one in particular. This picture hangs in my office and is a daily reminder of why I do my job. This young girl lost her mother to a heroin overdose in our county last year, and she's holding a picture of her mom. This appeared in the Citizen newspaper in April of last year. It's a powerful picture. I've zipped up many body bags over the last few years due to this poison that's on our streets, including one that contained a childhood friend. They died as a result of heroin, fentanyl, and opiate overdose. It's the most devastating thing that I've seen come into our community. It not only touches the addict, it leaves lifelong wounds for family and friends, as well as victims of crimes that come as a result. There are people tonight that understand this all too well and have suffered this pain and are living it daily. It is my goal to do everything I can do to force this drug out of our community and not deal with another grieving family. I do not believe that the adoption of this law will end our war on drugs. However, I do believe it will make a notable difference if adopted. Stolen property is being sold in our community regularly, and the proceeds are being used to buy drugs. This law will help us regulate that. I believe that the majority of our secondhand dealers and business owners in the county dealing in secondhand articles are good, hardworking, honest people. It is my hope that they will be willing to help us track potential stolen property and hold those responsible for the thefts accountable. Finally, I want your legislative body and any business owner affected by this law to know that I personally, along with the sheriff, want to assist our secondhand dealers should this law be adopted, to make the impact on their business as minimal as possible. It is our goal to help them help us. With that, I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Actually, Lieutenant?
Yes, sir.
Before you leave, there have been several changes to the law since it was distributed to us.
There were some amendments added.
Do you have those? Can you go through those real quick?
I can.
Thanks.
Under exemptions, in section 4, there were 2 sections added. Section J deals with used cars and car dealers. And section K deals with an exemption that will allow the licensing authority, that being the sheriff's office, to make take into consideration any special exemptions that might need to be made for certain situations, such as items purchased in bulk lots, or other situations where maybe there's a unique type of purchase made by dealers that the spirit and intent of this law isn't to track that type of property, but maybe there needs to be a special exemption for that item. Under section 6, as I mentioned in my words, under license fees, it's our intent, if the law is passed, that there be no fee charged for obtaining a license, and that any fees associated with the fingerprinting component of this be paid for using drug asset forfeiture money seized and currently held by the sheriff's office and the district attorney's office. Under section 7, again, it just reiterates that there will be no fee paid for fingerprinting. Under section 8, under licensing, that has to do with changes being made among any of the principals, officers, or operators of such a business, and ensuring that they provide fingerprint information to the licensing authority as well. Under section 9, under grounds for denial or revocation of a license, we did add certain sections that dealt with prior convictions for felonies related to drug charges. If the applicant is found to have been convicted of a felony drug charge or sale, they could be denied license for that conviction. And carry on from there that also a license could be revoked, a current license could be revoked if a license holder is convicted of those particular charges after having obtained the license. Under section 12C3, and I'm assuming that everybody on the body has these highlighted changes, correct? Mm-hmm. Under 12C3, exceptions could be granted for the requirement to submit reports to leads online should there be a special circumstance, such as if somebody's in an area without internet service or doesn't have access to internet service. we would work with the dealer to try to come up with a way that the items purchased could be reported in a different manner, should that be necessary. Enter section 13C. As a result of speaking with one of our local businesses, we added some verbiage relative to the purchase of new articles and how they would be authorized. One of the big problems that we have right now currently is that a lot of brand new retail items are stolen and sold to secondhand dealers. This section of the law dealt with that, but after speaking with one of our local businesses, it was obvious that we needed to further define what an authorized retailer or wholesaler was when it came to the purchase of new items by businesses that legitimately sell new items. And then under 14, under the penalty section, instead of the highlighted area being considered an unclassified misdemeanor without a definition of how long the punishment could be for a violation of that section, it was changed to a Class B misdemeanor pursuant to Section 5510 of the penal law.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point, let me call upon Robert Simmons. And Ms. Simmons, if you could state your name and address, and your comments are limited to 3 to 5 minutes, please.
My name is Robert Simmons. For those of you that don't, I'm sorry, I live at 7 Green Links Turn, which is in the town of Owasco. For those that you don't know me, I own RJ Jewelers in Auburn Plaza. I wanted to acknowledge the work that Sheriff Gould and District Attorney Budelman and County Attorney Westfall and Brian Schoeneck have done towards this law. And I just wanted to discuss, I've been in the community for a little over 30 years. And through my business and personal home, I've got a very substantial investment in this community. And I think we need a workable law. This is a problem. But I think the way this law is being worded, there needs to be a differentiation between jewelers versus secondhand dealers, because the amount of secondhand product that a jeweler sells is a very small percentage of their sales. It tends to be estate jewelry. If you look at the laws in both Monroe and Erie County, they exempt businesses doing less than 15% of their volume from the requirements that Detective Schoeneck was just explaining. I looked it up today. We have 27,319 individuals on our current customer list. And I know my customers expect a level of professionalism and confidentiality when they come into my business to do business. I don't think the way this law is worded that I can assure my customers of any confidentiality. That information will be put out to 22,000 law enforcement agencies. And how would you like your personal information if you're going through a divorce? You've got an abusive spouse and you need to sell something to be able to get out of that situation. You need money, and you're a prominent individual in the community. The other part of that, I don't actually know the answer, but we do a lot of estate work for local attorneys in terms of purchasing estates, valuing estates. I don't know how it might violate attorney-client privilege without getting into further discussion with them. If I have to be compliant with the leads end of this law, it would require me to hire an employee. Based on a $12 an hour salary, with benefit costs and taxes, that's going to cost me $36,000 a year to be compliant. I looked up the average age in 2016 of our clients selling us merchandise. It was 52 years old. And the average purchase price was $406. 74% of the clients selling were over the age of 40. The most concerning part that I haven't heard today is addressing the internet. Today I Googled sell gold and diamonds, and I got 9,490,000 hits in less than 1 second. There are no regulations on the internet. Last week, the largest online seller in the country of engagement rings just started to buy back engagement rings. They predict that the global secondhand market for jewelry at $1 trillion. There are numerous companies today like letgo.com, offerup.com. These companies, the Wall Street Journal last week, were given $500 million to pursue buying secondhand product. There's already a disadvantage trying to sell against somebody that's an online seller. We have to charge sales tax. They don't. So are you going to create the same disadvantage and cause people to sell online where you have no control? I went into the jewelry business 43 years ago because I really wanted to make nice jewelry and I wanted to sell nice jewelry. And with that said, in closing, I'd like to share a list of government agencies and other companies that I have either a reporting responsibility to or they have oversight in the jewelry business. The Internal Revenue Service, New York State Department of Taxation, New York State Sales Tax Department, New York State Unemployment, New York State Disability, New York State Workmen's Compensation, Federal Unemployment, Homeland Security, Social Security, Federal Trade Commission. I have to report to Excellus Blue Cross, Jewelers Mutual, Jewelers Security Alliance, Jewelers Vigilance Committee. And now I'm going to be reporting to the Cayuga County Sheriff's Department. Again, I have a tremendous respect for all the individuals here. But I think there could be a happy medium met at some point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, at this time, would anyone else wish to speak on the secondhand dealers law? Okay, this is not the last opportunity.
Mr. Chairman.
Did someone? Oh, yes, sorry. Please come forward. And again, please state your name, your address, and limit your comments if you can, 3 to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Give me a warning.
Spit.
My name is John Sosi, and I live at 111 Eastwood Ave in the town of Owasco. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and legislators for giving me the opportunity not just to be here tonight, but to speak before you. And before I start, I'd like you to know that I don't want to just address the legislature. I know that ultimately it will be your decision whether to pass this ordinance or not. But I'd also like to address the general public, and in particular the many merchants who may or may not be here, and the small business owners who undoubtedly will be affected by such a law. Though there's many advantages to law enforcement should they have this law as a tool, I want to speak about the one subject that I know, and that is the heroin epidemic, the opiate epidemic that exists in our country. If you paid any attention over the last few years to current events, the news, you have to know that we are in the midst of a national opiate addiction epidemic our country has never seen before. It's particularly bad in the Northeast. In central New York, it's one of the epicenters. About 120 kids a day die from opiate overdoses. And though I am qualified to speak about the human tragedy, I'd like everyone to know that there's more than just a human tragedy. By some estimates, the cost of drug addiction is upwards of $500 billion a year to our economy, to us, to each and every American taxpayer and resident. Now that's a comprehensive estimate. It includes law enforcement resources, insurance, homeowners increases due to the crime. It includes unnecessary unnecessary medical treatments. They're medical resources that are wasted and oftentimes not recovered. There's many, many parts to it, but trust me when I say it affects each and every one of us. About a little over a year ago, many very concerned individuals, some of which are in this room tonight, banded together at the request of several mothers who lost children. I say children, teenagers, they're still children to us, to drug addiction. And out of that, a group was formed called HEAL, Heroin Epidemic Awareness Group. And if it's done nothing else, it's forced me to learn about the problem and what needs to be done to address the problem. And one thing that's been clear through all the studies and all the research and all the forums is that it's a very complex problem. It's going to require a lot to solve this, to stem this epidemic, and to eventually reverse it. It's going to require action at the national level, at the state level, and at the local level. No single piece of legislation is going to substantially change this, but every piece will contribute. Every piece, every tool will contribute to helping address this issue. I know at this, especially in this day and age, many businesses, large and small, feel inundated with government regulations and unnecessary laws. And all I want to ask is of the legislatures and the merchants, before you make up your mind whether you're for or against this law, and in this rush to do away with much of the regulation that our country has, I'd like you to at least consider the benefit of a law as opposed to the inconvenience and the cost. I know the authors of this law have done everything they possibly can, and I'm sure they continue to lessen the burden on merchants in any way they can. And in closing, I just want to say that while we're trying to streamline our society, our economy, and we're trying to get rid of regulation and lighten the burden on businesses, which I personally am all for, I just want everyone to consider every law isn't bad. And when you're faced with the decision of whether to pass a law or whether not to, please base it on whether the good that law will bring outweighs the inconvenience. I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, John.
And
Thanks. Okay, would anyone else like to speak? So again, if you can state your name, your address, and please limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sean Butler, Chief of Police Officer, Police Department. My address is 38 Prospect Street in the city. Like the sheriff stated earlier, we tried to get this law underway 10 years ago, which I was a part of back then. And we didn't get the traction that we were hoping, and here we are today, and I appreciate us at this point where we are with the proposal. Basically, real quick, I just want to support and let the legislature know that the Outer Police Department is in support of this law. This is another tool for us to not only combat, like Mr. Sosi so eloquently said, the heroin epidemic that we have locally, but just victimization of theft that we have rampant in this county. This will help us recover some of that property. So, as my Deputy Chief Roger Anthony is here as well, you know, we've been debating purchasing this lease online because it's an investment for us as well. It's not a cheap tool, but with the success of where Detective Lieutenant Skank has gotten with this legislation, we chose to go ahead and purchase it last week. And one of our detectives, just a quick story, her first input, she's dealing with a local theft of some property, tools, and outside equipment from a local nonprofit. As soon as she put in the articles into the leads online, that same day she located the items in Syracuse that had been pawned, that without this tool, there's no way we would have been able instantaneous success for us. We can only assume that we're gonna have multitudes of successes, which leads to ultimately, like Brian stated, stopping the one funding source of these addicts in their quest for, to feed their addiction. Again, this is not a be-it-all, solve-all problem, but this is a tool to assist us as a community to trying to prevent and save another life. So, in closing, thank you. Again, we are in full support of this law. I would always be available to answer any questions. Any legislatures or anybody in the community I know are merchants as well. Feel free to call us, and I appreciate what Brian and the sheriff have done thus far. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. What? Again, if you could state your name, your address, and limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Adam Duckett, Fairmont Road in Aurelius. Also county coroner. Over the past couple of years that I've been in office, I've obviously seen the end of the road for a lot of people that battle addiction. And I can tell you that a good majority of the people that do end up in one of my body bags that night or the night before ended up going to sell a piece of merchandise, collect the money, and then end up usually getting the bag that ended up killing them. So it is very, very frustrating to see this happen, and if there's any way we could even save one life from this, in my opinion, it's worth it. I certainly am in support of making this as not as much of an issue to local businesses. I mean, as a physician, I know regulations from the government probably more than I should, and a lot of the inconveniences that sometimes they impose. But when sometimes they are actually, of the benefit of a human life, I think that that's certainly something to consider. So that's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Please. Again, if you could state your name, your address, and limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes, please.
Just so you know, I'm nervous. My name is Geraldine Gray. I own Grandma Jerry's Emporium. I am a merchant. I am for the law. I will say that. I am for leads online. I'm on there. I'm not for the $150 that I have to pay. I don't believe that I should have to pay to buy stuff, put stuff up online, and pay for your administrative fees, because I have my own administrative fees, and no one's gonna pay for those for me. And for leads online, it's free. To me, it's free. I don't know about anybody else, but I know for me to put it up there, it's free. And I believe that I pay enough tax dollars that should be covered under that. I will do what I can to help the drug addiction, and as a former addict myself, I'll do whatever I can. They have that. Us not buying their stuff or whatever is not going to help them. I can honestly say that. They have to want to do it themselves. But I will do whatever I can, but I don't want to have to pay $150 every single year. If I can't afford it, I'll have to raise prices and I'll go out of business. May not seem a lot to you guys, but it is to us, because we keep our prices low because we're secondhand merchants. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Sheriff?
Madam?
No.
Ma'am?
Sheriff, no.
There is no
Sheriff,
fee.
Sheriff, no. I'm sorry.
okay.
We're not discussing any of the
Oh,
thing.
fine.
I understand what you're going to say, but
Yeah.
we can't get into a discussion like that.
No, that's fine.
Not the purpose of tonight. So, would the, is there someone, yes. And again, if you could state your name, your address, and limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes.
My name is Jennifer Batrick. I live on Route 34 in Fleming. I'd like to begin simply by saying thanks for letting me offer my perspective. And I do believe that we do have a problem. And I think that
discussions like this that are gonna help us to figure out the best way to deal with that problem. My husband and I are antique dealers, and we don't have an open shop. And we also don't buy very much in Cayuga County. We purchase a lot of our items at auctions, at antique shops, antique shows. A lot of that is out of the county, a lot of that is out of state at times. We go on vacation. The law as it reads now, I'm still a little unclear as to whether my husband and I need to register as a secondhand dealer in this county or not. And it's the confusion I have when I read the local law that makes me concerned. So I guess the first question is, does this law apply only to items purchased within Cayuga County? And in the law, I was a little unclear as to what types of items a person like me, an antique dealer, would be required to report. Is it everything that we would purchase, or is it certain types of items, and what are those types of items? I guess in addition, you have an exemption section in the local law, section 4, exemption from licensing requirement. There is a letter H that does speak about antique dealers directly, but even in that section, I'm still a little unclear as to where I fall personally. So the only thing I can do is offer my confusion to you to say that it's just not clear to me what is going to be required. Here I guess I want to say is that there's many ways that an antique dealer can buy. There are many places. Public auction is one of them. Is that an estate sale? If a person passes away and their items go into an auction for an estate sale, is that an estate sale? Or what do you mean? And you say that items purchased from estate sales, garage sales, or yard sales would be exempt. Well, what about antique shops? What about, if we got a house call? What if our neighbor calls us and says, my mom passed away, can you look at this stuff and see what I should do with it? Because they wouldn't go to a local pawn shop for it. What am I supposed to do? Am I exempt from getting a license because I buy outside the county mostly, or do I have to get a license just for that one purchase? It would be my suggestion that perhaps the law could simply say if an antique dealer has a secondhand New York State ID, where they're required to get a New York State resale number to be an antique dealer, would that exempt them from having to register as a secondhand dealer in the county? I guess just more clarification is needed in my view as to what constitutes it. I'm not getting people coming to me saying, would you like to buy this because I need money to pay for drugs? That's not my perspective here. And yet we have a very small business. It's my husband and myself, and we have a 9-year-old daughter, and I have no time, quite honestly. And I realize that everybody's in the same position, but I'm very concerned that this is going to put a lot of extra work on my shoulders that I can't see where that time or money might come from it. Thank you.
Thank you. Smith. And again, I know I sound a little bit like a broken record, but if you could be sure to state your name, your address, and limit your comments.
Unlike a lot of people, I probably wouldn't have needed this microphone, although I think the sound system in here should be improved. I've had a heck of a time hearing people. My name is Doneen Pilot, D-O-N-E-E-N, Pilot, P-I-L-A-T. I live at 8001 State Street Road in Troop, but the address is Fort Byron. I agree with Jennifer with a lot of what she said. I too am classified as an antiques dealer, but actually I'm more of a collectibles dealer, okay? I sell in Madison County and Oneida County and all the shows at the state fairgrounds and others in Onondaga County and other places across the state. I do not have a shop here in town or in the Cayuga County. If I sell in this county, I just recently started selling at the craft show that's at the college in December. Don't take crafts, I take secondhand Christmas items and like that. At two of the churches, my own and the Methodist Church on South Street here in Auburn. I set up at those two places kind of as a dealer or as a favor to the churches, so that, just to bring in people is all. So that's the only times that I sell here in the county. And I have bought at the auction house next to the lady over here, over by the prison there, that Sean Harvey has. But I will stop buying there if it means buying that's the only place I buy in the county, if it means that I have to abide by this law. I sell, like I said, I think it needs to be clarified. Most of what I sell is like from $1 to $15. It's, I'm not saying I don't sell anything that's more expensive than that. God knows I have 3 grandchildren that are college age. I want things to be improved for young people as far as addiction is concerned. But I just can't see how me taking a picture of every single little thing that I buy and sending it to the sheriff's office, I couldn't possibly do that. Number one, I don't even have a computer. I don't have a cell phone. I don't have that kind of money. I just would like it clarified more, please, for those of us that just deal in little bitty tchotchkes and so on. There's two people that run shops in Fort Byron that just sell little knickknacks and figurines like that secondhand. Are they going to have to do this and take pictures of everything that they sell? I do not sell guns, coins, electronics, or even a lot of gold, unless I accidentally run into a piece at a rummage sale or something or other, a little something or other. So, like I said, it does need to be clarified more. I just can't take a picture of every single thing. Anybody that, these folks over here saw my booth this past weekend. I have thousands of pieces of glassware and linens and little toys and things like that. I can't take a picture of all that. Please clarify.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Again, if you can state your name, your address, and 3 minutes. Thank you.
I'm Rick Calavito, 9 North Marvin Ave, Auburn, New York. I agree with everyone that we need a law. It's not the question. It's how it's written. We need clarity. There's so much that needs to be done to make it work for everybody. Years ago when they tried to pass this, we fought it. And we met with now Chief Butler. He remembers. We all sat down together. There was about 4 or 5 of us dealers, and we said, we want to work with you. We will sit down and come up with something that will work for everybody. Nobody ever called us. We tried. And you come up with a law without even talking to us. We know how the business works. Talk to us. We'll come up with something that works for everybody. We need clarity. What is an exemption? What's the exemption mean? You call people, nobody will talk to us. What happens to the dealers who come in here and set up at Holiday Inn and buy gold for 2 days? Do they have to get this license? They can walk into this county, buy all they want, and walk out. What about the dealers that come in from outside these counties, other counties, daily, buying out of houses, buying here, buying there, buying from people who have stolen it? They walk right away. So you're condemning us to get this license and be, have to do this. What about all these other people? So we wanted to work with you people. We wanted to sit down and do something. Nobody ever called us. It's not that we don't want to. And I'll give the example, and I gave it to Chief Butler. When we're educated on what was stolen, we want to look for it. We don't want to buy stolen goods. And the example is, I hate to say it, but years ago, a man had a bicycle stolen, Richard Dushertinsky. Nobody knew until they did a news article, because he's known around town. There he was, pictured, his bike was stolen. A year later, I get a phone call. Oh, I hear you buy bicycles. I says, yeah. So I go down on Underwood Street. There's the bicycle. I said, where did you get it? They told me. I said, this is a stolen bicycle. I called the police. we got the bike back. Without that article and me knowing that was stolen, I would have bought it and I would have sold it. Now I'm dealing in stolen goods. Education is everything. And we brought it up, let's develop a website in Cayuga County. Whenever something is stolen, put it on that website. We, the dealers, can check it every day. We're out there every day. We see it show up, boom, we call. It will help. Or, you know, we'll all be willing to sit down and come up with something. But we've got to come up with something, clarify it so we all know. You put in there exemption. What does that mean? Tell us. You know, we're willing to work with you people, but just to put this on us without even talking to us. You maybe talk to one or two people. Talk to all of us. Maybe we can come up with something that will work for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. And again, your name, your address, and 3 to 5 minutes if you would.
My name's Scott Marsden. I own the Auburn, me and my wife own the Auburn Gold and Silver Exchange, excuse me, 200 Grand Ave. There's just a couple things. I did read the law that's up for vote here. Thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it. I've spoken to a couple of you already. What we do at the shop there, I do a lot of deals. We do a lot of deals with dealers. Like I would buy some coins from a dealer that he probably has held already. I think there should be something in that law stating that if he's a legitimate dealer, we shouldn't have to copy all his stuff down and put it on leads online. It's just really cumbersome to do if he's a legitimate dealer. And we also buy large coin collections, and I think it should be stated in the law that it's just the gold, silver, and platinum part of it. I mean, we may buy a big coin collection that's got a couple of books of pennies, nickels, silver dollars, etc. I mean, it's going to be hard to take pictures and list every little thing that's down there. I think it should be specified if it's just got gold content, silver content, or platinum, or any gold or silver jewelry or platinum jewelry. Just think it's just me and my wife at the shop, and it's kind of hard to kind of input that there without hiring somebody, and we really can't hire somebody. So I hope you guys can come up with some specifics in there to kind of help us out as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Unless I'm missing someone, no one wants to speak at this point, so we'll move on. I will ask as we go through, so this is not, again, not your only chance. If you decide later that you have something to say, you'll be allowed to do so. There are 2 other local laws that we're considering tonight. Does anyone want to speak on either of those? Great. So if I could have a motion to dispense with the minutes, the reading of the minutes from the last meeting, and to approve them. Mr. DeForest, Mr. Foley, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Dr. Durant, if you could state your name, your address, and limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes. Oh, never, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. First, want to recognize that I'm joined here today by the chair of our Board of Trustees, Dr. Linda Van Busker. Certainly, I had a written report forwarded, but just a couple of items that I want to highlight tonight. One, we just started our spring semester a week ago, and our enrollment has reached our target for the spring, so that continues to be on a positive note that our enrollment is on pace to meet and perhaps slightly exceed our goals for this academic year. In addition to that, we are in the early stages of doing our budget development for next year. And a big piece of that, we always start with reviewing the executive budget proposal, and then certainly going through the legislative season. A great deal of information and following has occurred in recent weeks with the governor's announcement of the new Excelsior Scholarship Program. And certainly as a public higher education leader, it's something that I warmly welcome to listen to the governor and to see a program that is to entice people to consider public education and in particular to be looking at the affordability of education and trying to support people. With that initiative, we also then have to look at what the proposals are at this point for supporting us in state aid. And last week, when the governor's budget was released for community colleges in particular, it is proposed that the community colleges receive flat base aid for next year, as we did for this year. Although in certain circumstances, it's something that we, given the climate, we can sometimes support. But for community colleges, what that means is we are actually paid in aid, reimbursed for related to enrollment. There isn't actually a flat line like there is in the county, a sponsorship model, where there's a maintenance of effort model, which you can always expect a particular baseline effort. So what that would mean for us, given a number of years and of being down in enrollment, would actually be a significant loss in state aid. So our advocacy efforts really begin in the coming weeks to working with our elected officials and certainly advocating for our efforts to try to get an increase in support from the state. And ultimately what we want to do is to be able to ensure the same thing, which is affordability, and to be able to keep our tuition costs down, to be able to make sure that access for affordable, high-quality education is our priority. So I'm very hopeful that as we go through the legislative process, go through our budget development process, and certainly to the point in which we come to you, the legislature, that we're all focused on the same thing, which is committing to have best education we can, most comprehensive education that we can, with quality programs and services to support our students, and to be able to keep the costs down. But in order to do so, we need to be able to find our resources elsewhere. And we'll be advocating and certainly telling our success stories to the community in the coming months as we advocate through the legislative season. In addition to that, I want to just mention that, as we're kind of entering the spring semester and entering the second half of our year, we're going to be focused on really examining many of our physical space needs on campus. Our Board of Trustees certainly has a priority to be, working with me to be able to identify a little more clearly of what our needs are on both campuses, certainly in Auburn and as well in Fulton. Because part of our vision for being, the college of tomorrow that we want to be is we know that we need to modernize the facilities. We know we want to look at possibilities to, expand some of our academic programs. We want to make sure our science labs are modern to support students and support our programs. And certainly looking at athletics and recreation to really complement what it is that we're trying to achieve. So I'm hopeful that in the next several months, we'll be really fine-tuning our vision, defining those impacts, and being able to share with you what we think is certainly an ambitious but an important vision for our college moving forward. So stay tuned, but I wanted to be able to make sure we can kind of lay the groundwork of something that's very important to us and that we'll be working on in the coming months. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Doctor, in regard to regionalization, are you in favor of the regionalization that we've been talking about for the last few years?
Absolutely. I would never advocate for a program that I wasn't in favor of. The regionalization concept, I think, for me, has multiple steps. And really the conversation starts with, we as an institution have a significant presence, obviously here in Cayuga, and have since its inception. But we also have a significant presence in Oswego County and Fulton, as well as online. And I think the basis for a regionalization conversation is really about sponsorship, but more importantly than that, at least the infant stages, as I see them, is a conversation with our partners in government to be talking about what our future is and really talking about the different realities that come with that. We all know that the institution has changed, the world of higher education has changed. In particular, at Cayuga Community College, we have 60+% of our student body comes outside of Cayuga County. So that in of itself, from just a data standpoint, to me, says that we are supporting, regional needs. And when we have the types of investments that we have, and certainly, I've been here a year and a half, but I think a great deal about our past. We've been very fortunate to have a sponsor like Cayuga. And this isn't in any way a negative. I see it as an opportunity for new leadership to engage with leadership in government to talk not only about what model is best for the college moving forward, but also how do we all partner together to make sure that we can have the higher ed institution that we want, and that we can support it in a way that's manageable for all parties. So the regionalization concept, in the end, is about sponsorship, and I think about how the collective works towards a future. But the beginning part for me is how do we get people into a conversation to really talk about, meeting some of these goals and objectives, and certainly a vision that we can lay out there, because these things take resources, and we know that we need to be as responsible as we can.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Mr. Mahunik.
Not a question, more of a comment. I know in your report you mentioned the TV commercials. We were fortunate enough to view a couple of those, very professionally done. I can speak from a personal side of this. I know we talk about enrollment all the time. I have a senior who applied to a couple different colleges. Within probably 3 days of applying to Cayuga Community College, he received the application checklist and everything he needed. Felt very comfortable. So all those things that you are putting in place, I think are making a big difference on that capture rate that we always talk about as far as inquiries and then capture.
Yeah, that's a great point. I should highlight that. One of the great opportunities that we have is we need to really continue to build out there, not only that we're here, but what we offer. And so the identity for the community to associate with what academic programs we have, what are our success stories? How do we capture that? What are the multiple pathways that you can achieve by enrolling at the college? And the new marketing campaigns related to commercials, related to the way we've laid out communication programs from just the actual operation of how we engage with prospective and current students. All of that is focused on trying to have students be comfortable, as I say far too often, trying to meet their expectations of us. And if we can do those things, there'll be clarity in the community of what we do. There also will be many satisfied students because they took advantage and have experienced here. As an aside, I was telling a couple of legislators this the other day when I was talking with them. One of the most powerful things that I've observed in this community was on some of my first days here, when I was talking about, when they were telling me about how valuable and important this college has been to a member of their family, themselves, and to their futures. And that resonates throughout. So by trying to capture that type of positivity and using that and harnessing that forward, I think can be very powerful. So we want to meet your expectations too, and the best way we can do it is to build upon our brand identity and really to push out there publicly all that we can offer in the many ways to get there.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Do we have any individual legislator or committee reports or reports for individual legislators? Mr. Foley?
Mr. Chairman, I sit on the tourism board as part of the legislative appointment. The tourism board has been approached by the city of Auburn in order to look into possibly administratively running the new Welcome Center that the city of Auburn is planning to build, or at least be a part of that project in some way, shape, or form. Maybe have a presence from their current location on the corner on Genesee Street over to across from the YMCA / parking garage, however you want to look at it. So they are in talks about looking into that and just exploring everything. Nothing has been settled, but I do want to update this legislature on that information. And if anyone has any questions, please be in touch with myself or my man.
Okay, thank you. Would the county have a role in that? Do you know at this point?
Not the county itself. as the county's tourism board would, but not.
So nothing is
so.
expected of us specifically?
Right, yeah.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
just, it's more so, just if people are hearing that the county's tourism office might be moving to a
Great.
different location, questions might arise from that. I just want to keep everyone on the up and
Yeah,
up.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, any other reports from individual legislators? Okay. Madam Administrator?
Good evening. My report did get uploaded to the box, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. There were a couple of things that I wish to highlight. One is that a group consisting of Kelly Anderson, Lynn Marinelli, and Jennifer Indelicato and I got together to discuss the 2016 budget process. And so we did have some feedback on that, and hopefully that will serve you well for your 2018 budget, actually, 2017 budget process. I met with Bob Wallace and Alan Wright of Eastern Shore Associates, who represent NYMER, our insurance agent. In the big dollar amounts, it is a large premium. The good news is that it came in at a little less than we had budgeted for that. So you have about $12,000 worth of budgeted dollars that you can divert to something else. He did comment that our auto experience is actually better than other members of NYMER, but NYMER is a group organization, so the other counties' experience does weigh on our premium. But he also gave us compliments on our workers' comp record. So overall, it was actually a good report on what our activity is here. Also, I had questions about whether or not there was a department head meeting. There is. It'll be held at 11 a.m. tomorrow in this chamber. So, any questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you. So I wanted to share with you tonight that we've had a number of meetings on water issues over the last month, and actually even before. I think probably most notably on January 11th, we hosted a meeting with the both regional and state Department of Health, Department of Environmental Conservation employees, representatives from the City of Auburn, the town of Wasco, from the county departments that are interested and concerned with water issues. It was a very good and productive meeting. There was a follow-up meeting today with the Board of Health that was attended by some regional Department of Health people, and were joined via phone by a number of other people from the DEC district as well as from New York State. So all in all, I reported last month, and it remains true. I remain very encouraged with the direction we're going in. Of course, it doesn't hurt that the governor has put $2 million in his budget to implement the water treatment, the correction plans that will be necessary in order to remove the toxins, any potential toxins from their drinking water in the future. So that's very, very good news. And we need to keep aware of that and make certain that our electeds are supporting that effort so that that money actually sees it through the budget process, so is available to the City of Auburn and the town of Wasco for correcting the problems that they're in the process of identifying. So I think the movement is very positive. The cooperation we're getting from the state at this point is good, and I'm very pleased with the direction in which we're going. So, as you all know, Suzanne is leaving us, and I'm sure you all join me in wishing her well. The departure of any employee is a time to reflect, and the departure of a senior employee is even more so. It's an opportunity to rethink, to reflect, and to take a moment to decide how to move forward. And we will take that opportunity. The first thing we're doing is Steve Lynch has agreed to working with some of his staff to engage with the department heads to begin to look at their perspectives on what the position has been, should be, and might be as we move forward. So those discussions will begin very, very soon so that we have that important input. We also need to reflect as a legislative body on what we think, what we need, what we want, and how we see that position as we move forward. One of the things I'd like to start with is a look at how we relate within our committee structure, particularly issues of agenda in the committees, agendas in executive sessions, and related issues. So what I'm going to be asking is for our minority and majority leader to identify a couple of members of their caucus to sit down with me and to begin the process of really looking at how we work as a body in relation to department heads, in relation to the administrator. I think this is an important first step. It's an opportunity, and I think we should take it. There will be other work we have to do, of course, but this is an important first step. So I'm asking that this be done pretty quickly so we can start meeting the first week in February. Next week is NICEAG, so I will be attending that the first of the week. And as you know, I've sent an email. I'll be visiting with some of our electeds up there, taking whatever message that our department heads and you have identified as important. So that's a step that I hope will be very productive, positive, and it will be coming back to this body for more discussion and decision. Okay. So any questions of me at this point? Okay, great, thank you. So if I could have a motion to approve the appointments and reappointments as a group, does anyone object? I'm sorry, who moved? Mr. Vitale, a second?
Second.
Ms. McNabb Coleman. Any objections to that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Could I also have a motion to dispense with the reading of communications and announcements?
Moved.
Mr. Baxter, second. Mr. Didio? Any objections? All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, let me pause a moment to make certain. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on any of the local laws that are under consideration? Okay, thank you. So, Ms. McNabb Coleman.
Mr. Chairman, we have the regular monthly resolutions, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. I'd like to offer them as a bundle. They've been through committee.
Does anyone object to bundling these? In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I have WM1, WM2. They've also been through committee. I'd like to offer them as a bundle.
Any objection? In which case, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Health and Human Services has 13 resolutions, HH 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Have all been through committee. We'd like to offer them up as a bundle unless somebody'd like them separated.
Anyone want any of these separated? Seems not. In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Foley.
Mr. Chairman, Government Operations has 7 resolutions. They have been through committee and all passed. I will offer them up as a bundle unless anyone wants one single.
Thank you. Does anyone object to bundling these? In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. Thank you. Mr. Didio.
Planning has one resolution, has been through committee. I'd like to bundle
Does
PL1.
anyone object to bundling PL1? Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Baxter.
Mr. Chairman, Public Works has 4 resolutions, PW 1 through 4. They've all been through committee. I would offer them as a bundle.
Does anyone object to bundling these? In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Mahonik.
Mr. Chairman, we have 4 resolutions as well. They've all been through committee, so I would offer them as a bundle unless anybody would like any separated.
Anyone object to these together? In In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We have, in addition to local laws, we have a couple of legislative resolutions. Let's deal with those if we may. So, Ledge 1. Ms. McNabb-Coleman, do you want to do this, or would you like me?
I wasn't
It's
sure
up to you.
Ledge 1, resolution supporting Cornell Cooperative Extension Associations in New York State. Those have been through all of the committees and passed, so we're off of that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then, if we could deal with Ledge 5.
Sure, Ledge 5, 16-day notice of public hearing adopting the local law for 2017 to establish energy loan program for the county of Cayuga.
Any discussion on this to set a time, the date and time for local, public hearing? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, before we close the public hearing, is there anyone who would like to speak? Seeing none? Okay, so, yes, sir.
I realize we don't have discussions back and forth, but would it be reasonable to give the sheriff or the lieutenant a moment that might respond to some of the questions asked? Or?
No,
Okay.
in a word. But first, I need to close the public hearing. So the public hearing is closed. Okay. So let's look at, if we may take these one at a time, and the reason for that, Mr. Baxter, is what I was going to say was that there has been a lot of good input and good discussion. It would seem to me that the best way to handle this is, instead of voting on this tonight, is to reflect on that discussion, send it perhaps to government operations for a more full discussion, and then bring it back next month for a vote. That allows us to consider what's been said. The people here that have spoken have considered their positions, they've thought about it, and I think it's important that we not just just move forward without considering those. So if that's agreeable, we don't even have to make a motion. We can just send it back, and we'll bring it back next month for a vote, if that's agreeable. If someone does want to move approval, we can, but Mr. Mahunik.
I would like to make a motion that Ledge 2 goes back to committee, and we take in and reflect on the thoughts that were expressed tonight. But I'd also like to commend the amount of work that's gone into this. This started 5 years ago, and it's been a long run. So thank you all for everybody that's been working on it. Hopefully we can tighten this up in the next month, and we can get something that's agreeable to everybody and get this through, because I do believe it's important. I worked in Onondaga County, and I've seen this work. I've dealt with probation officers that, because of laws like this, were able to give us information to get help to people that really needed it, and it made a difference in their lives. So I support this wholeheartedly, and I hope we can just clean it up, educate people, and make sure that we have something that's right and in place.
Right. So the motion then is to send it back to committee and to express gratitude for the work that's been done in designing up to this point. So do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Didio? Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Whitman?
My only concern here is, can we have somebody that the public can contact, one individual with their thoughts? I think a lot of the questions that were raised tonight are answered in here. It may not be crystal clear. It's definitely not to me, but I think they're addressed. So if there's somebody they can contact, I don't know if it'd be the county attorney, I don't know if it'd be you, I'm not sure if it'd be the sheriff, and also with some of the other ideas that were bounced around, so that those ideas make it back to committee and we can take a look at those as we're looking at the rest.
Yes, we'll make that's great. We'll make a list of all of the suggestions and all the concerns, so that the committee has those in written form and people don't have to remember them. And I think that's a very, very good suggestion. In terms of contact, what I would suggest would be this: if anyone thinks of something else they want to include, or has a clarification, they need a clarification on something, if they could let our clerk know, the legislative clerk, if they want to discuss the law, they should feel free to call me or any legislator about their concerns, and I'll encourage them to do so. If it's a technical legal issue, call our attorney, who will, I'm sure, find some way, as all attorneys do, to deflect the question. You're welcome. And that's what, if that makes sense, that's what we'll do. So if any of us get a legal question too, we'll pass it on to our attorney, and we'll proceed that way, if that makes sense. Mr. Baxter?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, would it be possible to also on the county website to have frequently asked questions about the second-hand law, have answers there on a page that people can go to throughout the month?
Yeah, I think so. Mr. Tobin, is that possible? That's a good idea. Yep. Yeah. The great thing about being chair, I will direct the.
I will direct.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. So we'll post those on the website.
Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you. Good idea. Okay, I've lost track. Did we vote?
No.
No, okay, so we're still discussing. Does anyone else have, Mr. DeForest?
I would also make a suggestion. I think there's only 1 or 2 dealers left here. And I'm sure that Gwen's probably going to get something about the paper and the actual website to address the questions, but not everybody gets the paper. So if you have contacts of people, and you could share that with some of the other dealers that are here, I think that would be a great asset, just to have someplace to go.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other comments on the motion? Mr. Foley?
Just for clarification, it's going back through committee, it's coming, not as a legislative resolution, but as a single to government ops? Is that correct? I just want to make sure.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then any committee is free, if they feel that the committee wants more discussion, that's absolutely okay, but the point of referral is government operations, correct? Okay. Hearing no other comment, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, very good. Okay, now, do local laws need to be roll call? Yep. Okay. So are we ready to vote on the local law to establish energy benchmarking requirements for certain Cayuga County municipal buildings? This is the benchmarking bill. Could I have a motion?
Move it.
Mr. Didio, second. Mr. DeForest. Is there any discussion on this law? Mr. Whitman?
I might be missing it. What does this law do? I have 3 pages of definitions, and is it just to keep track of our energy usage?
Yeah, fundamentally, that's, I mean, in layman's terms, it tracks energy usage so that we have a benchmark, a starting point to work to improve our energy efficiency, keep track of it, and know if we're being successful or not being successful. And it also then, because of that, it's my understanding that it will allow us to better bid the future energy, energy use. If Mr. Lynch, do you have anything to add to that?
The only other thing I would add is that once we document the baseline energy use for all the buildings, we'll keep it up to date and we'll have it as public information each year so people can see how much energy certain buildings are using.
I don't think it's a bad idea to keep track of our energy usage. I feel like we already have a lot of laws on the books that we don't need. I don't know why we need a law to do that. And don't we already have that information? I mean, we have our energy bills. We can't just refer to those.
Wasn't this part of
I might be missing something.
The reason that they made it a local law is part of an application process to become eligible for a NYSERDA grant for the county, which would
That's
be
my missing piece.
$250,000, no matching funds required. And I guess what the
Mr. Chairman, you could have just said free money. Okay, got it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the future, could we have that spelled out, something like that, that it's, you know, to help obtain grants and everything?
I think it was spelled out in the memo that goes on the back of on all of the resolutions, but does that get put in the box with the resolutions, or it only goes to the one that goes to committee?
Yeah, I mean, it's not on the end result.
Not on this,
so.
it's sitting here on our desk.
It wouldn't be on the one on the desk, no.
Sorry about that, we'll make sure it's happening in the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And then the final local law for tonight is to provide the salary increases for certain county officials appointed for fixed terms. And those you do have the list. There are only 4 or 5 people. I think you have the list on your desk. If I could have a motion. Mr. Vitale, a second.
Second.
Mr. Bennett. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. If there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion for an executive session relating to the employment history of a particular person.
I have other business.
Okay, Mr.
Just
Mahoney.
on Ledge 2, can we put that through judicial and public safety as well, since it kind of does fit the mold
Through
of that
both?
committee?
Yes.
Thank you.
And we don't even, should feel free to do so.
Just wanted to make it clear.
Absolutely. Mr. Bennett?
Motion to go into executive session?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And we do not anticipate any business following.